There are other business models which are critical. One of the more famous one is Ryanair, which you may have heard. It's the most profitable airline in Europe, been for about 8 years now. And they are very profitable because they give the tickets away for free. So how do they make their money? The first thing we have to understand that is one of the few airlines who do not consider the passengers as their customers. The airports are their customers. That's their primary innovation. So what they do is they go to a secondary airport and they say, nice airport. And people say, yes, very nice airport. We like our airports, good airport. And they say, good business. And they say, no, everybody lands at the big airport over there. Right? Not good. And then they say, so how much do you pay me if I bring 500,000 people here next year? And they have an auction. And whoever pays the most, that's where they land. Yeah. So you buy your ticket for £1 to go to Milan and you end up in Bologna. That's you know. And as Michael O'Leary would say, that's your problem. You get what you paid for. You paid nothing. Yeah. So, and it's about understanding these things. It's about understanding how they make money on every step of the way. If you buy your ticket 3 months in advance, know exactly where you're going, print out your boarding card, don't have any check-in luggage, happy to sit anywhere in the plane, you can fly for £1. If you come to the airport late, you have to pay for the ticket. You want to check in luggage, that costs you extra. You want to talk to a person, that costs you extra. You want to go ahead in the queue, that costs you extra. You want to get a boarding card, that costs you extra if you haven't printed it beforehand. Then there's a lot of money that you have to pay. And in addition, he gets money from the airport. It's extremely successful. But he has no frequent flyer cards because he doesn't care about you. And he's quite blunt about that. His view is, I don't care if you ever come back. There's 1 million people who want to fly for free, so get lost. Right? So what he has done is he has moved the internet business model for advertising, where you get paid by eyeball, into the airline industry. And that is what business model is about, moving from one area to another. Anybody ever flown through Heathrow's Terminal 5? You will know it looks like a terminal. Don't get fooled. It is a shopping center. And the whole business model is a shopping center. The revenue streams are shopping center revenue streams, which is why when you go in, you're not allowed to go straight into the lounge. You have to go all the way around. It's the IKEA principle. You have to pass everything so that we can maximize your impulse purchasing opportunities, especially as an airport where you are a captive audience and are bored. And shopping is a great alleviator for boredom. So it's very good that. We can also get it wrong when we try to put in place new technology without understanding that we need to change the business model. Here's a great example. This company went bankrupt on December 9th, 2008. And how come? It's a very famous big newspaper. So they approached digitalization and they said, we will have a digital version of our newspaper. We will give it to you for free. We'll update it regularly and you can customize it. So, fantastic. So you get all these things, and then they suddenly get surprised because you cancel your subscription to the physical newspaper. That's not good. Revenues go down, they end up in trouble. They have to bring in extra capital, so they get a venture capitalist coming in. And what's characterized most of those venture capitalists, and I'm very nasty now, is they then actually don't understand the business they invest in. So the first thing they do is to do a huge dividend, of course, to offset any risk, and then you have to cut costs. So they look at the cost and see where are the big costs. The big costs are in editorial staff. They are expensive. So we fire them. And now we have absolutely no way of adding value to what we download from the wire services. So now there is absolutely no reason whatsoever to buy my journal. And even my free one reduces quality, and I go bust. Right? That is putting in new technology without reflecting on your business model. So they created a huge amount of value for their customers, but they were not able to appropriate any of it. so they went bust. You can go the other way. Here's a great company, Financial Times. Have the most professional journalists I've ever come across. The issue here is when you're a journalist for this paper, you have to write, every time you write something, you have to write an in-depth analytical article. That's a long piece of work. Then you write an executive summary. The executive summary ends up in the paper. And the paper you have to subscribe to. And it is not cheap, because it's based on insightful precision journalism. Then at the bottom of the article, there will be a web link saying, if you want to know more, go to this link. That's the Financial Times web link. In order to access the in-depth article, you need another subscription. And when you're in the other subscription, maybe you would like to know some statistics or some automatic analysis of what happened in that industry. Then you can get that analysis extracted by computers from all the things written, but you need another subscription for that. And then, of course, they can run conferences for which you have to pay. They can run training sessions around development in industries for which you have to pay. They can put together continuous updatings of analysis for which you have to pay. They can write specific books in the Penguin brand for which you have to pay. So, as is said here, yet another year with record profits for Pearson Group. That's a company who understands how to put new technology to use and change the business model so you appropriate more value after than you did before. That is doing it the right way. And if you do this, you can get some fantastic returns and kill your competitors. iPhone. How many of you have iPhone? Hand up. Yeah, 40% to 50%. How many of you had iPhone 3 years ago? Oh, anybody raised their hand would be alive because it didn't exist at that point, right? Okay. This company has gone from nowhere to the not so very impressive market share globally of 2.5%. That's nothing. But it has gone from zero to taking half of the money that's available in the complete mobile industry worldwide in the same time. That is impressive. And how did they do that? Because, anybody here an engineer? Very good. There is an odd one that are the same background as I am. That's actually very good, all right? This is a crappy product. It really is bad. Is all the technology badly put together? The antenna doesn't work. How can you release a mobile phone with an antenna that doesn't work? It's extraordinary, right? But it doesn't matter because you love it. It is fantastic to use. You can customize it to the things you like. So you are very interested in going out 2 o'clock every morning watching the stars, understanding what they are. You can download an application that will tell you where you are and what you see. You know? You're interested in whatever, and there is something for you there, right? So you can make it your product, making you and your life valuable, making it easy for you, and you get to know how to operate it. And then everything else seems so cumbersome, right? So it's brilliantly designed because it changes your behavior and locks you into this product. And so the technology component is not the most important. The design important is critical, and the business model is the real killer. It's how they get charged and how they pay. Before this, if you wanted your Telstra to sell your telephone, you came in on your knees and you said, please, Mr. Telstra, how much do I have to pay you to sell my telephone? And they said, 55% of the profit margin or whatever it was, right? And next time they said 65, and then they said 75 and so on, right? And in comes Apple and says, and by the way, if you want to sell my product, you have to pay me. Can you imagine that? Right? You know, my other investment proposal for you 3 years ago, look, I want you to invest in this company. We're going into a completely mature industry with really big players. One sits on 80% of the profit pool and 40% of the market share, and it's totally technologically dominating, owning the IP on all things. They are the biggest used phone, and they have the highest R&D capacity, and they are present in every country in the world with operations and manufacturing in China in the low-cost possible way. But we're going to break in there, and instead of using it, we're going to ask everybody to pay for everything we do. We're going to ask the customer to pay multiple times. We're going to ask the suppliers of content to pay multiple times. And we're going to ask the operators to pay to sell our products. Any investors? Not likely. Looked very unlikely. It's a great success because they understood what they did very well, because they've done a few failures in their life and they learned from them. A few finishing comments maybe around some things that people worry about. And one of them is offshoring. And here I quote, first one from Switzerland and the second one from Sweden. Switzerland says, the majority of revenue come from abroad, yet we continue to innovate and manufacture many products in Switzerland due to the outstanding base of engineering and technical talent here. Okay? Cost is irrelevant, right? The value of innovation requires these skills. They have to be there, otherwise it's not worth it. The R&D director of Scania, a small manufacturer of trucks, says, as long as the total cost of labor does not exceed 15% of our cost base, the disadvantage of offshoring outweighs the advantages. And I can verify that that is actually true across most parts of the manufacturing industry. As long as you can keep your cost of labor below 15%, it's just not worth moving activities to other places. It's just not worth it. So if you have a manufacturing firm, go home, look and see how you can drive down your cost to that level, and then you're okay from that perspective. And it's very important to understand these things, this distinction, what's good. 1% of the population in every country is incredibly intelligent. It's a normal distribution, right? 1% of 20 million is less than 1% of 1 billion. So there are more intelligent people in China than there are intelligent people in Australia. It's a numbers game, okay? So we cannot compete on that. That is impossible. Right? What we can compete on is things that are culturally specific and traditional specific and location specifics. Anybody ever taught audiences which contains managers from different countries will know there is a fundamental difference in the ability to be good innovators. Because being a good innovator has two, in the simplest version, has two steps. The second step is to solve a problem. There is nowhere better to go than China and India for that step. But the first step is to identify the problem. They are, generally speaking, not very good at this. This is a culturally specific issue. It's a thinking out of the box activity. And in countries, it turns out countries which are secular in nature, have high diversity and good education with lots of exposure, are very good at identifying problems that matter. And then you cleverly outsource the solution to somewhere else. Because the guy that owns the problem makes the money, not the guy that solves the problem. Ask any engineer present. Okay? It's one of those things. Now, it's very important that. And what do we then have to do to be good at this? Well, we have to make sure that we have openness to bringing in talented people, right? We have to have openness to foreign capital. Yes, it's okay that some people own some of our businesses. That's fine. You know? We have to have a quality workforce, good education, continuous education that is flexible and can be deployed in a number of areas. We have to emphasize innovation constantly. We cannot live on history. We're being caught up all the time, so keep innovating. We have to work with driving up firms capability-wise. Nobody got well trained by being rewarded for sitting still. You get well trained by being rewarded and forced to exercise. And how do we do that? We use demand-side policies. We use things like procurement as a tool to drive capabilities by asking for things that you can't make today. So you're forced to take a risk and go for it if you want to get that. But if you succeed, you have a contract, right? And then you can use that to something else. We use regulation to drive innovation. You know, California is the best example of that. You know, they go up and they say, About 2 years ago, they said, if you by 2014 cannot use, I forgot the percentage, but say 60% of the energy that comes through the wind of the car to do something useful in the car, in other words, you capture that energy, then you cannot sell your car in California in 2014. So the car industry, of course, goes, how are we going to do this? You know? And some really good journalist turns up and asks this public sector person, one of Arnie's boys, how do you think companies are going to do that? And he gives, in my opinion, the perfect answer. He says, I have no idea. That's not my problem. That's why we have companies. They will find a way. And what you end up with is companies who are very capable because they have to find a way, because they cannot afford to ignore the 8th largest economy in the world, which is California. Right? So, of course, it's more difficult if you are a small economy, but you can do it locally. And then, of course, we need to work with things like clusters and value chains and activities like that to enable companies to develop constantly. And we need to have strong research resources and strong education resources, but they need to be focused on what can contribute in the local economy to value creation. And we need access to lead customers. The latter is one of the biggest problems in Australia. You have very few, very large lead customers, which is why, for example, I do not believe in some of the investments you do in Australia. For example, in Victoria, where you over 10 years' time have invested an unbelievable amount of money, I don't know, 600 million to $1 billion, in research around biotechnology for medical applications, which, if the objective is to generate business, has been a total and abject failure. If the objective is to generate academic research, it's been quite successful. But it's quite expensive per article. And why is it a failure in business terms? It's very simple, because you do not get businesses out of medical research. You get R&D project with an ABN number. Okay? And it takes 15 years before you have any cash flows, and costs a lot of money. And what happens is that some of those nice, hovering, large multinationals have a little eagle up there that keeps an eagle eye on what goes on down there. And when a little of projects comes very close to these things, they come down and they swoop it up for a price which is less than the cumulative investment and bring it home to their pillar industry, be it in the US, UK, or Sweden, where they build their R&D activities. You need a pillar industry to build industries. So, in the concluding areas, I would ask a few questions of Australia. What should be done here to set the stage for a promising future? Because you can have that. I am totally convinced. I have seen nothing that tells me you shouldn't be able to have a promising future. What are the required changes? Who should lead them? What are the consequences if you do nothing? That is the worst decision you can make, is to do nothing. That's also a decision. So I want you, as participants here, to leave with a question. And it's a quote from a famous president. What can you do to assist the necessary economic development into higher value offerings that you appropriate a higher amount of value from to contribute to the necessary economic growth in South Australia, which underpins the capability and ability for the government here to provide you with all the services and the other socially good that you want to have? Think about that. Thank you.